What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and today on the show, I'm going to be talking about Nosferatu. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, drop in, leave us a good review wherever you get your podcast. Really helps the show, and I really appreciate it. So the day has finally come. Nosferatu has hit theaters on Christmas Day. This is actually one of my most anticipated movies of the year to round out the year, end it all with a bang. And I was mainly excited about this because one, Robert Eggers is directing it. Pretty big fan of Robert Eggers and what he does, especially with the aesthetic that he brings to his movies and the kind of the authenticity of like the time periods that he kind of covers. I really like The Witch. That's one I kind of go back to every so often. A lot of people kind of give that flack, think it's a boring movie. I actually really dig it. The Lighthouse is pretty great as well. I've only seen that one once though, so I'm due for a rewatch of it, but that was a really entertaining movie. The Northman, I'm not really a fan of. I have only seen that once, so maybe I'm due for a rewatch of that as well. Just wasn't really a fan of like the whole Norse, like Viking type story and everything. And I felt like that one, people were calling The Witch boring. I thought The Northman was boring overall. But that's a different story. I was excited for Nosferatu because of the gothic horror element of it. I actually really like the original 1922 Nosferatu. I've seen that a couple times throughout the years since like high school. I unfortunately haven't seen the 70s version. I actually am due to actually go check that one out eventually. And also the one starring Willem Dafoe. It's a completely different type of movie from what I hear, but I'm sure watch that one as well. But for those who don't really know too much about Nosferatu, it's pretty much the story of Bram Stoker's Dracula, just with a couple things changed here and there. The names are changed and everything, because the original Nosferatu from 1922, it adapted the Bram Stoker Dracula novel, but they didn't have any of the rights to it. So obviously they had to change some things around. They made the movie, and Bram Stoker's estate ended up suing them. The courts ruled that all the films and everything had to be destroyed. Of course, somebody ended up keeping some reels or something of it eventually and ended up getting widespread. And that's why people are able to view it now. It's on Amazon. You can even watch it on YouTube. But I'm really glad that somebody was able to preserve that film because it's such a classic, even like as a silent movie. I've only seen only a couple of silent movies in my life. Even with it being that like 100 years old and being a silent movie, it still has a lot of creepiness factor to it. So that paired with Robert Eggers' film style and him, like the way that he shoots his movies and the cinematography of them and the atmosphere within them, I was 100% down to see what his version of Nosferatu was going to be. And just to be right out in the open with it, it didn't disappoint for me at least. I'm hearing a lot of mixed things about it. It's one of those movies where you're really going to like it or you're probably not going to like it much at all. And it's one of those movies I can also see some people kind of slapping the boring tag on it because it's over a little over 2 hours long. It has a lot of scenes of just, discussions and talking and stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of exciting stuff in there that carries the movie, but I think there's a damn good adaptation of that 1922 movie. And of course, before I get any further into the discussion about the movie, I want to talk about the cast. You have Nicholas Holt, Lily Rose Depp, Willem Dafoe, who is a Robert Eggers regular at this point with, The Lighthouse and Northman. And then this movie, you have Ralph Ineson, who was in The Witch. He's pretty good in this. I think he was better in The Witch because he has a lot more to do, but he's pretty decent in this one as well. Aaron Taylor Johnson, who I am just not a fan of. Everything I've seen Aaron Taylor Johnson in, have not been impressed with him. I just feel like he's a very boring actor. Doesn't really have a lot of range. And I'm gonna try to take it easy on the dude. He's kind of going through it with the Craven release and everything as of right now. But I've just never been a big fan of him. He's serviceable in this movie. I think he's decent for the most part. The only parts I really don't like him is whenever he has to get angry and he's going off on someone. He's just not believable. I don't believe it. He just doesn't have that type of range in him. But of course, to talk about the undead vampire in the room, we're going to talk about Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgård, who's on a tear now. He's played Pennywise in the It movies. He's in a lot of stuff as of right now. He was in the Crow reboot, which I did not go out and review for anybody who's a fan of the channel or has watched the channel for a while. I'm a big Crow fan. Was not eager to see this movie, the remake of it. I still didn't get around to seeing it at all. Eventually, maybe I'll do like a Patreon review or a review on the channel at some point. Not eager to watch that one. But Bill Skarsgård is big as he's ever been at this point, and to see him kind of go from Pennywise a couple years back to Count Orlok, which is such an interesting character and like because we haven't really had too many interpretations of him at all throughout the years. And to see what kind of interpretation he brought to this Count Orlok character was definitely one of the biggest draws to this movie as well. And man, he knocks it out of the park once again. He did great with Pennywise. And I think he does even better, takes it even further with this Count Orlok in this one, because just similar to Pennywise, you can't even tell this is Bill Skarsgård underneath all the makeup and everything. And I'm not going to go as far as like spoiler wise exactly what he looks like. I'm not going to show any pictures or anything. Maybe just like some of the promo still where you can barely see him like from a side profile or anything. But I don't want to spoil anything as far as his looks or what he does. I'm just gonna say he just has that presence about him. It feels like a real movie monster on the big screen. And for those who haven't seen it, you need to check this movie out on the biggest screen possible, just because of that amazing cinematography it has, and also you want to see it in a theater with the surround sound so you can really hear everything. Because this movie is similar to The Witch, not as bad as The Witch, fortunately, but it has the very like old timey Victorian, like William Shakespeare dialogue. It feels like you're watching a play at certain times, especially with how dramatic it gets at certain points. And I feel like that's a part of the charm in it as well, because this movie was right up my alley, being a period piece gothic horror movie. I feel like every movie monster should be in a movie that's set around like a period piece gothic horror at some point. And I feel like that's a direction they should go with doing these reboots of these monster movies, like the Wolfman movie that's coming out here this year now. That would have been perfect to set in like an old timey gothic horror setting. Make it black and white or make it color like this, and just have like the different colors with the aesthetics and like the atmosphere, just the cinematography. I feel like almost every like movie monster should be done like that in some way. I'm not talking about like Michael Myers or anything, but I'm saying like the Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein. If you're going to do those movies, I don't want to see a modern telling of them. Being it modern, a modern version of those monsters just comes off boring to me. I want to see these kind of take it back to like the old school roots, make it gothic horror, and just like these old timey, like like 1800s Germany, like this movie is set or something. I don't know. Make it very folklore, fairy tales type shit. I just love that kind of stuff, and I love that aesthetic, and I just would love to see more movies like that, especially with the technology and the way they're able to build sets like that now. It would be amazing to see more movies like this. As I was saying, a lot of that old timey like kind of speech that they've had and the way that they talk, it's kind of hard to make certain things out or kind of get the gist of what they're talking about at certain points. Specifically with The Witch, I have to watch that movie with subtitles every time I watch it, just so I know what's going on. This movie isn't nearly as bad as that. I was able to make out a good majority of what everybody was saying and pick up on what's going on, but it kind of gets confused here and there at certain points, just because someone will say something like, "Oh, I don't really know what they meant by that." So you kind of have to pick up on the top context clues a little bit. But back to my original point, Bill Skarsgård does a absolutely tremendous job. He knocks it out of the park as his counter lock in this movie. The design of him, it's definitely not what I was expecting going into this movie. Without spoiling too much, I was kind of expecting a more traditional Count Orlok that you've seen throughout the past iterations. They go their own route. They kind of make it more of an authentic vampire from the 1800s, like pretty much from what I understand, the kind of description of Dracula in the book, in a way, and kind of going back to the Vlad the Impaler type look and portraits and stuff. The look of them in the movie threw me off for a good portion, but as the movie was going on, it kind of grew on me a little bit. But still, after like 4 or 5 days of seeing the movie, I'm thinking on it, it's still there's one specific decision they went with I wouldn't have gone with myself, and it still kind of rubs me the wrong way, and I just want to change it. But I just kind of have to grow with it and kind of grow to like it, I guess, because I can't change it. But there, as for anybody who sees the movie, will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's one specific thing about Count Orlok I would change, and that's it. I think other than that, he has a perfect performance. His cadence and the way that he speaks is just so creepy, and it's very thick and heavy. And I don't know, it's perfect for that monster within this time period. And the way that they don't show him very often throughout the movie, as far as like a full frontal, like seeing everything. I mean, talk about full frontal. There is some full frontal, but without getting spoilers, they don't show him on camera, with his face very often. They hide him within shadows. They do a lot of amazing shadow work within the movie, similar to like how you see within the original silent movie, like his hand going up the wall or a shadow going across the wall. There's a lot of great cinematography dealing with shadows. I believe a lot of this movie was filmed with natural candlelight and everything. And it just gives you that amazing authenticity in the movie. And I wish that a lot more movies would kind of go that step further to make them more authentic, based off of what they're going with. And I don't know. I just wish there was more love and care put in movies more like this was. And that's what I really like about it, is just the love and care that was put into it to make it as authentic as possible, to make it as kind of spooky and eerie as possible. Now, as far as like the scare factor, I wouldn't say it's too scary. There's a couple instances where it kind of makes you jump. I wouldn't say it's a jump scare by any means. Like it's not any cheap jump scares by any means. But there's a couple little creepy scenes and effective scenes in there that'll make you go, "Whoa, that was pretty creative," or "Oh, I wasn't expecting to take it that far" at certain points. But Robert Eggers really accomplished what he set out to do with this by making it a very creepy, authentic version of Germany at that point in time. And just the way that people talked and the way that people dressed and the way that people interacted with each other and everything. It just, I don't know, it just comes off very authentic and real. And that's exactly what you want out of these types of movies. And then whenever it really gets to like the supernatural type shit, he goes all out with it and makes that even effective and creepy and kind of believable in a way as well. I'm not going to really go too much into the story itself because this movie is basically like Bram Stoker's Dracula has been told so many times over so many different formats. So the basic broad view is just Thomas Hunter, played by Nicholas Holt. He works for like an estate agent who's got an offer on this place within town from a Count Orlok. He's not available to come to the residence to sign the deed and everything into the city. So Nicholas Holt's character has to go all the way out, travel for like a couple weeks out to Count Orlok's castle so he can get him to sign this deed and everything. And Nicholas Holt's wife in the movie, played by Lily Rose Depp, Ellen Hutter, she does not want him to go on this trip at all. She keeps having these dreams that something bad's going to happen. She keeps having these visions of this monster. And she has this connection with Count Orlok, which I'm not going to explain any further because you need to see the movie to really understand it and just to kind of really get that effect over it, because one, I don't want to ruin anything. But over the course of this meeting that Nicholas Holt's character has with Count Orlok, he lets him see this locket that his wife gave him and everything. And Count Orlok starts having this infatuation with Nicholas Holt's wife. And from there, you get a lot of the stuff that you've seen throughout like Dracula's, adaptions and everything. You get a lot of amazing scenes at the castle. Those are some of the best atmospheric shots and amazing cinematography that you have in the movie, is the lead up to the castle and everything throughout the castle as well. It's so damn creepy. It's amazingly effective. And just that meeting between Nicholas Holt's character and Count Orlok when they first meet and they're going over the deed and everything, it's just so tense. You can cut the tension with a knife. Throughout the rest of the movie, you kind of hit a lot of those main beats that you hit throughout like a Dracula adaptation, with Count Orlok going on the ship and making his voyage to the city. And then in the city, and there's a plague that starts happening within the city. Is it an actual plague, or people start turning up dead because of a vampire being what's in their midst? Who knows? That's for you to find out within the movie. And that's where I'm really gonna let it have it, because it does take its liberties and kind of changes certain things, so it's not exactly how it was in the 1922 or exactly how it was in Bram Stoker's Dracula or in these other adaptations. It kind of does its own things and takes certain liberties with certain things as well, especially with the ending and how everything unfolds with that. I'm really not going to talk about that, but all I'm going to say is the movie ends on a very kind of bittersweet note, and it's going to leave a lasting impression and a lasting image that's going to carry with you throughout, the next couple days or weeks that you're thinking about this movie. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this movie a lot since watching it, and a lot about that last scene and the stuff leading up to that and everything. But there's a lot of memorable stuff about this, even though it kind of treads over a lot of stuff we've seen in the past. And that's really due to the cinematography and what Robert Eggers was able to do as a director to make them memorable, to kind of make them his own in a way, even though it's stuff we may have seen before previously. And I can't go any further in this review without talking about Willem Dafoe, who is, once again, it's Willem Dafoe, man. He's fantastic in damn near everything that he's in. He is kind of the Van Helsing type character in this movie. He's not named Van Helsing or anything like that, but he is like the Van Helsing type character who is from, he's like a doctor or a professor who is familiar with the occult and familiar with research among like Nosferatu and the vampires and stuff like that. I'm terrible with the accents and stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. But he has a lot of history with like research. He doesn't have any like history firsthand or anything, but he has research, and he's actually been kicked out of university from being a teacher because of his studies with like the occult and these type of monsters and everything. But he's kind of the go-to guy when stuff starts happening within the city, and with it specifically with Ellen, the wife in the movie, and with Thomas. There's a lot of, they bring him in there, kind of helps them kind of guide along throughout the investigation, everything, and kind of figure out what's happening within this town, what's causing this plague, what's happening with Ellen, the wife. She keeps having these visions and these dreams, and she keeps having these seizures and spasms and stuff. And talking about Willem Dafoe's performance, who he is great. There's some comedy within his performance. A lot of it is serious, and he does chew the scenery quite well with some of these monologues that he has in there. And another person who chews the scenery quite well is Lily Rose Depp, and I feel like she's not going to get the flowers she deserves with this movie. A lot of people are saying like, "Oh, she hammed it up, she's overacting and stuff," but I mean, like, I feel like it's really hard to play this type of role and kind of have these monologues and these speeches the way that they are, very like old school style, like Victorian or William Shakespeare type dialogue. It's kind of hard to be like act out a scene without it being dramatic with those type of, phrases and the way that the dialogue is and everything. So it may come off like she's overacting, but to me, she acted the hell out of this movie. She was amazing with what she had to do as far as some of the monologues and the parts where she's had to like break down. Her out of anybody in this movie has a lot more to do. Her range within this movie is so wide. Like, she has so much stuff that she has to do in this movie. And I mean, I just gotta commend her because I haven't really seen her in really anything. Really, I saw her in Yoga Hosers that Kevin Smith made years and years ago, where like his daughter was in it as well. But that was it, and that was kind of a cheap, schlocky, supposed to be a comedy, and it wasn't a very good movie, honestly. But that's really the only thing I've seen her in. So to see her kind of take the lead in this one and knock it out of the park, and just like seeing the stuff that she has to go through in this movie and the stuff that she has to go through as an actress, I got to commend her for that. She knocks it out of the park. She is fantastic in this movie, especially with some of the stuff you see in the trailers, or like her having these seizures and stuff, these night terrors. It's so effective. To me, it's so effective. I see a lot of people kind of laughing at it, or kind of mocking it on social media and stuff, and it's like, I don't understand why people go to these movies if you're not going to look at it from a serious point of view. Take the story at face value and everything. But that's just me. Like, this was the type of movie that I was just locked in the whole time. They had me hook, line, and sinker from the very beginning with like the old timey like opening cards and all that. There was a couple little lulls in this movie. I would say this movie probably maybe could have had 15-20 minutes cut out to make it a little bit more concise, but you can really say that about any movie nowadays that's over 2 hours long. But with that being said, I think with the runtime, I think it was paced pretty well, on my opinion, just because I don't mind when there's kind of slower scenes with talking and dialogue and stuff. I don't need something to happen every 5 minutes, to keep me on and like keep my brain going or anything. I don't have a short attention span like that. I'm fine with things being a little bit more drawn out and being built upon. The first half of this movie is so tight with how it was paced, and I would say probably the second half is where it kind of gets a little, for the lack of a better term, disjointed. It's just not as paced as well as the first half with the castle and the introduction of everything. It's once you really get into everything and he and Count Orlok comes to the town and everything, that's where it kind of starts jumping around, and it doesn't feel as well paced as the first half. But that's not saying it's bad or anything by any means. That's just my opinion. Now, coming into this movie, I didn't have like super high expectations or anything like that. I just wanted it to be a good movie, and that's exactly what I got out of it. It was a really solid movie that kind of did its own thing at certain points, and that knocked it out of the park as far as the acting, the music, the cinematography, the horror, spookiness, creepiness aspect of it. I think it checks all the boxes. And I think what might really put people off is just because, for anybody that's familiar with Dracula movies or familiar with vampire movies or Nosferatu, it hits a lot of the same story beats we've seen previously in a lot of these other movies. I wouldn't say there's a ton of different changes that they bring to the movie or anything like that from other adaptations. There's certain things that definitely make it its own, especially as far as the ending, but a lot of the stuff we have covered before, which may kind of turn some people off in a way. Speaking of turning off and on, this movie is horny as hell, by the way. And I wasn't super expecting that going into it. I mean, it seems like that's the thing as far as vampires go. But they kind of ratcheted up a little bit further because especially with the other adaptions as far as Nosferatu goes, I don't they weren't super horny like that, but man, they kind of they take it a step further within this one. I mean, there isn't like nudity at every corner or like that, but be prepared to see some full frontal at some point, and it's not going to be who you expect. Now, obviously, with a new movie, I don't do like a buy it, rent it, or miss it, but I kind of do a go see it in theaters, wait for VOD, or miss it altogether. And this one, I would say, highly recommend going to see this in theaters. Check this out on the biggest screen as possible. If it was available in IMAX, I mean, it might be. I would have checked it out in IMAX because I would have loved to see this on the big screen, just with a lot of those amazing shots that they have in this movie. And I know I keep talking about the cinematography, but once you see it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's through the whole damn movie of just these amazing creative shots, and I just don't understand how they came up with a lot of these things, or just like how they put it all together. I mean, this movie is just it seems like just like a piece of art. And that's what I like about Robert Eggers' work, and I'm always kind of looking forward to what he does next. And I may not like it at certain points like The Northman, but I still appreciate the love and the craft that goes into making these movies that he makes. And that's what makes him a director that I'm always going to be kind of on the lookout for a new movie for. But like I mentioned, this movie really checks all the boxes for me as far as being like a horror fan. It's a gothic horror that's a period piece set in like the 1800s Germany. It's exactly right up my alley, and it has a ferocious, amazing monster in it, played perfectly by Bill Skarsgård. Amazing performances, amazing music, paced pretty damn well. Maybe could have cut maybe 10, 15 minutes out of the movie here and there. From what I understand, Robert Eggers already said there's going to be an extended cut that comes out on Blu-ray and everything. Already excited to see what that's all about and how much more is added to it. Just because I love extended cuts, I love seeing like the director's original vision of it. Maybe that they maybe couldn't get away with in a theatrical version because people would complain that it's 3 hours long or 2.5 hours long or whatever. I don't know. I just love seeing extended cuts and seeing what was left on the cutting room floor or what the director's original version of that movie was. My only real complaint about the movie, though, is just that one aspect of Count Orlok, which I can't really talk about because I'm along with the director. I want to keep the secret safe as far as what he looks like in his appearance and everything. And I think that's another reason why they didn't kind of reveal Count Orlok ahead of time. Obviously, you want that element of surprise, so you don't know what you're expecting going into it. Similar to Long Legs, which happened earlier this year with Nicolas Cage's character. But I think if they would have released a full image of Count Orlok, I think there would have been a lot of backlash immediately. And I feel like that's something they didn't want to deal with leading up to release. And they were like, just we'll deal with that when the movie comes out and everything. And hopefully people will come around to it. And I mean, I'm coming around to it slowly. It just seems like a weird decision. And maybe I'll talk about eventually on like a review down the line where I have a guest on and we'll really take a deep dive into the movie and kind of talk about spoilers and everything. Overall, I had a great time at the movies watching this one. I would go to see a movie like this any day in the theaters. This was a very entertaining watch. I was locked in the whole time. I just want to see more movies like this, man. I just want to see more gothic horror period pieces with monsters. I'm a simple man. That's all I want, man. That's all I want. But anyway, go see Nosferatu in theaters. I highly recommend it. That is a review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Drop in, leave us a good review wherever you get your podcast. Really helps the show get out there to a lot more people, and I really appreciate it. If you're a returning viewer or a fan of the channel, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel over the past year. It's definitely been our biggest year so far since running the channel and everything. And I have a lot of amazing stuff planned for 2025, a lot of exciting stuff that I'm super stoked to get into as far as like setting up a Patreon, having some more guests on and everything. I just really want to thank everybody for supporting the channel in 2024. That was our biggest year yet. And I'm hoping to make 2025 even bigger at this point. So thank you so much for the support, and I'll see everybody next week.